For Sunday, February 24th, you found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda this morning, the General Assembly moves toward new voting systems with paper receipts. There were dueling election hearings in the state of Georgia last week. And guess what? The maneuvering for 2020 in the presidency is already underway in Georgia. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us. The pace at the state capitol picking up, and we're going to begin our broadcast with the General Assembly. And here's Lori Geary to lead us off on one of the major issues.
Well, Dick, it's electronic touchscreen voting machines that print out a paper trail versus physically filling out a paper ballot with a pencil. The electronic machines passed a hurdle this week.
It builds on the success of our old system and incorporates the best practices of modern day.
Republican State Representative Barry Fleming made his case for electronic touchscreen voting machines with a printout that is then scanned into the state's voting system. It was 2 days of public comment, at times intense. Cybersecurity experts testified the electronic machines would still be vulnerable to hacking. They recommended hand-marked paper ballots that would ensure accurate results. Fleming disagreed.
Pencil-marked ballot, election officials, attorneys, and partisan vote reviewers have to interpret stray and accidental pencil marks on an improperly completed ballot, meaning that the voter may have their vote counted incorrectly or completely invalidated.
The bill could be on the floor of the House as early as this week.
Thank you, Lori. Before we turn to the discussion of all that, we should note the gang's all here. We haven't been together in a while, and everyone's here. Alexis, welcome back.
Thank you.
Darren, welcome back.
Good to be back.
All right, here we are. So, looks like this voting machine thing is greased. From what I'm seeing, it looks like the system has been chosen. It is the more expensive one. And there is a paper receipt, we think, Phil.
Well, I don't know if it's greased, but it is before the full House coming up. And one of the things that I think we should all discuss is that what happens when you have your electronic touchscreen voting, and then you have your printer next to it, and the printer prints out your receipt, which I like. I think everybody kind of wants a receipt now, so you can audit it. But I'm not sure if a barcode is the way to go for my receipt. How do I know how I voted if I just get a barcode receipt? So I think that could be a sticking point. None of us here are IT experts,
right.
but I'd like to hear an explanation as to how that's going to be good for an audit.
So
well, and I thought what I saw was that you got a ballot coming out of how you voted.
But I think another option was this barcode that they've been talking about, which would kind of defeat the purpose. I mean, if you get a receipt from a store, you can kind of look and see what your items are. I think everybody would want a printout of who you voted for to make sure it matches.
I agree. I think that's vital.
So they're going to have to put another $50 million on that.
Well, I don't know. It's $150 million now. Now, while that was happening, we had 2 hearings on Tuesday in the state of Georgia on elections. We had the famous federal voter suppression hearing run by congressional Democrats, which was a showcase for Stacey Abrams. And then we had our committee that passed, state committee, that passed this machinery out. And it was like a weird thing because on the one hand, the state's being accused of all sorts of malfeasance, Theron, but on the other hand, they're fixing it.
Well, I think that you had a bunch of congressional leaders in town over at the Carter Center who did what they should be doing. You may remember, Dick, when Trump shut down the government, one of the first bills that the House Democrats introduced was a voting rights bill to basically improve voting rights access, but also fix some of the voting problems that we know that happen in elections all across the country. And so I think it was a really good display of congressional support. But the one thing about the voting machines that was very clear in both in hearings, and I want to commend the Georgia Democrats and the Georgia Republicans for really having this conversation, is that it's really 2 goals. One, you got to make sure that the vote is secure. And more importantly, Dick, you got to make sure that the people of Georgia feel that the vote is secure. And so I think that's what we're moving towards. But I think that Georgia is on the national stage now as being a state that has been under leadership under a Secretary of State who's now governor, who did do some good things to fix some of our voting problems. But there are some ongoing voting problems that now Secretary Raffensperger is going to have to work with the members of the House and the Senate to get resolved. And
most of those problems are local, because that's how elections are conducted.
The bill also includes some other parameters that really haven't gotten a lot of coverage, and it limits the rejections of absentee ballots that have those mismatched signatures. You can't change polling locations within 60 days of an election, and you have to notify voters before registrations are canceled. So they are touching on some of the problems that we saw in the gubernatorial election.
In an effort to get the Democrats' support for the measure. Those are Democratic bills.
I think two things. I think, number one, both the political left and the political right have a lot of problems with the election systems and voter integrity, and that kind of unites for once the right and the left. We've got to get this right in the state of Georgia. And you're right, Dick, it is, a lot of this is local because 159 counties do control all of their elections. But secondly, I do have to say, Theron, that was a sham, that so-called congressional Democrat field hearing. There were absolutely no Republicans invited. If you're going to have a debate,
invited, they didn't come.
No, that's not true. Some of them never got invitations. I did a little research on this. Maybe you could have at least had one or two. Heck, I knew a bunch of people that would have showed up to give the other side. It was a totally slanted hearing. But I am glad, to your point, I'm glad we're having a debate between all sides here.
One thing I want to add is that there's two debates, I think. One is on the machinery and the up-to-datedness or whatever it is of the technology. The other is about policies and practices. And the policies and practices are things that the congressional hearing was focused on because of the things that were charged with Kemp in the
They were made up, yeah.
They weren't made up.
Yeah.
They were not made up. The policy that he had for...
Because Fulton County can't release voting machines and you have long lines, that's an understandable problem. It's not a conspiracy.
But the problem, not only if it's a conspiracy, but the direction of the Secretary of State to limit early voting, to limit purges, and limit the number of registered acceptance signatures.
That's federal law. He was following the law.
But then it was ruled out. It was outlawed by the court, and then the state legislature came back and passed a law to make it a law.
And under Brian Kemp, more people have voted ever
and they would not
before.
have been able to do that without
record minority participation
due to Stacey Abrams. But that's the other thing is because of her efforts to register people to vote who had not registered and who had not voted before.
All right, let's leave the election debate alone because it's going to be with us a bit longer. A question for you, Phil: is David Ralston, the Speaker of the House, on the hot seat? One state representative, a Republican from Beaufort, has started a drive to move David Ralston out of the Speaker's office. That's one. I don't know if there's anyone else signed on. What do you hear?
I think this week will tell the tale and how the Speaker continues to handle this. There'll be a story in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution today to follow up what they've been writing about with regard to many of these old cases. Just for viewers that are coming into this, the Speaker's an attorney. Many of these are very old cases. I think, Laura, you mentioned one is 12 years old. The Speaker has gotten rid of some of these cases and got them taken care of last year. I'm told that he's continuing to do this, but I think he has to, number one, reassure his caucus. What he's done is legal, but the optics are terrible, and so he's got to address it this week. I think he's going to come out. He's doing media interviews as we tape, but I think he's got to reassure people that I'm taking care of this, and that, in fact, a lot of people don't know this. An attorney just can't abandon a client. This is kind of complex. You've got to get the client's agreement or go to a DA and get rid of it.
I mean, 12 years is a long time to try to get rid of this. And also, I mean, he was citing legislative duties from a law that was back in 1905. If anything, maybe he doesn't have to resign, but if anything, they really need to change this law.
Well, the other thing is that the legislative leave law policy that we're referring to is not just I want to get this in, Dick. It's not just a law that only protects pertains to the Speaker. It's every single attorney in the legislature. So he or she who needs to actually get the legislative lead policy to basically postpone the case while they're in session. Another thing is this: the Speaker of the House is the third most powerful position in the state. So he's a part-time Speaker doing a full-time job. He has a great deal of responsibility. And the third thing that is really interesting to me, and this is a question for Phil and Dick, the criticism hasn't really been coming from legislators. You had former Governor Deal, Governor Kemp, former Governor Barnes all come to the defense of the Speaker. It's been the radical right who's been attacking this Speaker. So my question to you guys is...
No, I don't think it's the radical right.
No, it is
citizens of those
counties.
No.
You listen to the radio stations, the Erickson.
Well, that's true. That's a good
They are
point.
attacking the Speaker. So my question to you guys is this some kind of Republican conspiracy going on? because seriously, if you look, they're saying that he's
absurd.
a person who's... No, is he supports
Actually,
sex
that's a pretty good point.
Well, I think that
gotta get out.
obviously
Go ahead,
Theron
Phil.
loves to throw the grenade in here. I think it's a question. I think it's a question of just getting rid of some of these old cases. I think the Speaker has got to be committed to do that.
Well, what Representative Clark said, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
No, that's right.
And if
That's
it's not
exactly
illegal,
right.
it certainly feels unethical.
It does. It looks terrible. The optics are awful. All right,
I would tell Representative Clark this. I don't know if you watched The Wire. It's a part in the series where if you shoot at the king, you better not miss.
No,
so if
that's
you're
right.
shooting at the Speaker, you better not miss.
All right, we got to get out. We're not done with the state capitol yet. We got to get out. When we come back, a classic case of feather bedding in state government. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
As we said, there is some Republican concern about the House Speaker, David Ralston, down at the state capitol, but I think now there might be some Republican concern as well about the job placement of former Governor Nathan Deal's daughter. She was given a six-figure job at the state lottery a few weeks before the governor left office. I'm sure she's a trained professional, but it looks to me, after the great 8 years Nathan Deal had, it just looks tacky. What do you think?
It looks like maybe Kwanzaa Hall and Kasim Reed, perhaps.
Well, it has that look. The
Reason
difference is the other one was illegal, this isn't, but you know.
Well, it may not be illegal, but it certainly looks unethical.
It's all about the optics.
Yeah, it just looks terrible. And I understand an outgoing governor wanting to put his people, so to speak, into safe, secure jobs if they've served him well. There was another one of those examples. But I just think you have to be careful, Theron, about your family and your blood relatives.
I'm going to quote what Chris Riley said in the paper. We all know Chris Riley, the former chief of staff.
The red-haired governor.
You said that, I didn't. But he said, as I recall, there were job vacancies. They applied for the vacancies. They interviewed for the vacancies, and she got the job. I think, Dick, we got to give the former Governor Deal a pass on this one. Listen, I mean, it is not unheard of for daughters, siblings, family members of an elected official to have a fair and proper interview process with an agency. And I think that if it was Atlanta or DeKalb, Phil would probably be jumping all on that leader right now, saying that it was cronyism, it was some type of backdoor deal. I think at the end of the day, Carrie has served the state well as the governor's daughter and has been in Republican politics for a very long time. And I think she applied for the job, and I think that the lottery probably took some extra steps to make sure that she met the qualifications of the job before they hired her. So I think it was okay.
I think the qualifications are the key. In fact, if you're looking for a job like that, you have to have some political connections. You just can't be a green person.
Well, if you go back in time, though, remember that's what got Governor Deal in trouble during the campaign when he was forced to pay for his daughter's bankruptcy.
That's right. She's gotten him in some headlines before. Her name is, by the way, Carrie Deal Wilder. We should mention that. Enough of that. And I want to just put a little summary here before we turn to some local news. The legislature is moving. Nothing is final. There's a process here. And we are seeing movement on the Medicaid waiver that Governor Kemp wants. We had the Atlanta airport bill that would change it to a state authority, dropped in the state Senate this week. And horse racing emerged from a committee. The Tennessee boundary line to get some of that water, that's moving. And late in the week, another hate crime bill, Georgia being one of 5 states that doesn't have a hate crime bill, and I hope we stay that way.
Right.
But that's all moving, and I think we can discuss them as they get closer to
I will make one
actually being
footnote on
voted
the
upon.
airport takeover bill that it's probably got about 34 or 35 co-sponsors, so it's going to pass the Senate.
I think the House is the question. The House is the
The
question.
House is the key, but you know, Theron, you know this better than most. There's horse trading that goes on. I know you're shocked to hear
There's
this.
a lot of horse
And
trading.
so never say never.
You don't have to trade more than horses.
Never say never. Are you talking about parimutuel horse wagering? Yeah.
I'm for that. All right, let's change it because none of that's really about to happen. We've got time on those issues. So let's turn our attention to Atlanta, where the City Council is working on ethics reform, and I'm a little bit confused. The City Council, Lori, wants a task force, and I guess Mayor Bottoms wants an ethics office. Have we got that distinction properly?
It's actually a flip side. So Mayor Bottoms wants the task force, which passed unanimously in the City Council, and then Council President Felicia Moore is looking to get almost like an inspector general, an organization that would have more teeth to go after some of the individuals who possibly could be doing corruption. So there's a little bit of give and take on this issue.
And one issue, and the timing, I gather, is one issue is colliding in timing with the other. We'll see where that goes. It was also, I think, Phil, a couple weeks ago, you were saying that Mayor Bottoms ought to go to Buckhead.
Exactly.
She's going.
She's going, finally. I think it was because of this show.
Oh, yeah.
Phil, you're going to take all the credit. I mean, I tell you what, I got mysteriously some Facebook messages that I think Phil had orchestrated. No, listen, big shout out.
She's going to have three town
Not just Buckhead.
She finally is addressing the crime wave in Buckhead and other areas. She's holding actually 3 town hall meetings. Better late than never.
Yeah, I think the first one is going to be on February 28th in Buckhead, and this shows you that the mayor's taking public safety very seriously. But more importantly, I know Alexis backs me up on this, is that she wasn't going to respond to a letter that many council members and other people in Buckhead thought was a little inappropriate from Mary Norwood. I mean, the mayor did this on her time, but no.
She just wrote her a letter. I mean, what's
but it was some really.
She just doesn't like Mary Norwood. I think it was a good letter. I hear from other council members too, Democrats, friends of yours, they thought that, and some of them represented Buckhead, they thought that the crime ought to be addressed and the mayor ought to be there as quickly as possible.
Well, the mayor is going to Buckhead. So, of all my Buckhead neighbors, I'll say this again. I said it on one show. We will be okay.
We got to get out.
Just be
safe.
safe.
We should note that the Georgia Supreme Court this week threw out a clause in the law that says that if you refuse to take a breathalyzer when you're stopped for a DUI, that it can be held against you in court. It's going to drastically change the way local police and state police handle DUI arrests. We're talking about taking them to hospitals for blood tests and all that sort of thing. It's going to be much more complicated.
Now, if they get a warrant, then you still have to get that blood test. So, and it was, by the way, it was a unanimous court ruling, which is interesting, to uphold the letter of the Georgia Constitution.
There you go. All right, when we come back, we're going to turn to politics and the Gwinnett County MARTA referendum. Stay with us.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
All right, early voting begins next week in many special elections, including one in the city of Atlanta. But the big one is in Gwinnett County, where the voters there will be asked to approve the county signing and joining MARTA. Of course, Theron and Lori, you're both working on that, so it puts you in a bit of an awkward position in discussing it. So why don't I start with you, Phil? I mean, I don't want you to join in, but I think Phil, why don't you? I have my doubts this is going to pass.
Well, as we've discussed before, it's all about turnout, and it's a special election. It's March 19th, right? And early voting, believe it or not, is starting Monday, tomorrow. So I think what's happening is there's 2 Gwinnett's here, and this is going to affect one part of Gwinnett very well, and people are looking at the pros that will happen to ease congestion, and they're looking at the contract, and there's local control. On the other hand, the other half of the county really might just shrug their shoulders and say, I don't want this. Do I have to pay an extra cent? It's 6 cents now in the sales tax. It would raise it to 7 cents. Do I want to do that? I think, again, it's turnout, and we'll just have to wait and see.
Lori, is there any Republican opposition? I've looked for signs of it. Or I mean, I say Yeah, there's some Republicans who oppose it or are quiet about it, but is there any organized opposition? Usually there is. I haven't seen
Not
any.
that I can see. I think it's kind of scattered and spread out. But I think there's a bigger issue than just transit here, too, because, you know, I think if Gwinnett wants a seat at the table in terms of attracting high-paying jobs in this day and time, then they've got to do something about transit, because millennials are really demanding it. I mean, just ask Mercedes-Benz and State Farm right near MARTA, ask Pulte, ask NCR, which moved out of Gwinnett into Midtown to be closer to transit. That's one of the reasons. So I also think, and look, I am working on this because I believe in transit, but I also think Gwinnett has a history of paying for things that they want. An East Blast, right? Education Splost, and then they have one of the best school systems in the state. And so if they invest now, it will pay off later.
Darren, how do you get a millennial who's busy at work to take time off from work, perhaps, to go vote in a special election on one question?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a unique challenge for us. Again, Lori and I are working with the Go Gwinnett committee to basically encourage people to vote yes on the referendum. So I encourage people to go to gogwinnett.org and basically learn more about this tremendous opportunity for people in Gwinnett. But it's really three ways, Dick, is that we've got to target them at their doors. And so there's a robust effort going on to try to make sure that we let people know that the election is coming up. Digital is always a very sort of effective way to communicate with them. And then we just got to tell the story. And then I think that Lori just did a really good job of talking about the history of Gwinnett. And I got to give the AJC good credit here too. I think they've presented a very fair case, pros and cons, about this tremendous opportunity that Gwinnett
I think it's
has.
more important what the Gwinnett Daily Post did.
I've got a quick question though for Theron or Lori though. If MARTA is extended to Jimmy Carter Boulevard and I-85, that is going to cause more traffic congestion. How do you answer that if MARTA is extended?
Well, that's not true, because one of the things that we're going to encourage people to do is to actually utilize MARTA and to ride it. And so I think what we're hearing from the people in Gwinnett is that they're willing to drive to whatever location MARTA will extend to. They just want to have the option.
But doesn't the line end right there?
Well, the line will
It's
end
going
there.
to pour out all these people.
Well, it could, but again, I mean, Gwinnett, again, I mean, they're one of the, I think, the most advanced counties we have in our state, that they'll figure out a way to deal with that. But it's all about reducing traffic, and it's also about reducing congestion.
And it also provides more rapid bus transit lines.
Exactly.
So you've got other options, not just heavy rail.
Alexis, while you were out,
Yes.
you couldn't go see Elizabeth Warren. She was in Gwinnett County, too.
That's right. I missed her
The center of the
altogether.
presidential universe. Elizabeth Warren was
In Gwinnett County. Imagine that.
Yes, and we all
And
know
Ivanka
why.
Trump was there too.
Imagine that.
Isn't
And
that
Ivanka
interesting?
Trump was there, yes, but she's not campaigning for president. But Elizabeth Warren went to Gwinnett County. She did not bring signed copies of her cookbook, Pow Wow Chow, but she was campaigning there. And then Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota, decided to have a reception fundraiser with the old Democratic Party. Roy Barnes, Gordon Giffen, Stacey Evans. That Democratic Party doesn't exist anymore, does it?
Well, I don't think I would
After
put
Stacey
Stacey
Abrams?
Evans in the old Democratic Party,
Yeah.
but she was with some older gentlemen who used to
But
represent.
But I believe
It's
Stacey
old
Abrams
art.
owns the Democratic Party.
No, listen, Stacey Abrams
would-
is the leader of the Georgia Democratic Party right now.
Yes,
That
that's
is
a
known.
good assessment that she is definitely the leader of
Okay.
the Democratic Party.
And no offense to Senator Nikema Williams, who's the chair, but I think from an electoral standpoint, she's definitely, along with other Democrats.
So Stacey Abrams doesn't need Roy Barnes or Gordon Giffen or those
we
folks
gotta-
Not at
anymore.
all.
That's
I don't
the
think
We got to
deal?
get out.
She
And
didn't have
Stacey
it before.
Abrams people said that Amy Klobuchar was using Georgia as an ATM. Oh, well. All right, when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we'll begin winners and losers with you, Philip.
You know what? I have several winners. One of them is the Skyhawks. Have you ever heard of that name? Theron and I were at an event the other day, and we saw CEO Steve Koonin of the Atlanta Hawks, and he made some news. They've got a new G team that's going to be out there in November in College Park playing, and it's called the Skyhawks. So they're winners. I also want to make Michael Hightower a winner. Theron and I co-hosted an event, the South Metro Development Outlook Conference.
Is he out of prison?
It's, you know, I know you don't like him, but I tell you what, he deserves a lot of praise for this new chapter in his life. He had a
question.
all-star cast of people that were promoting how South Metro is really happening. And, you know, my winner is Brian Jack. He's a young man from Buckhead. He just got promoted as the White House political director.
Phil and I definitely agree on that. Definitely big shout out to Michael Hightower. He's been out of prison for a few years, Dick. More than a few years, probably decades.
I can't keep track.
Chairwoman Charlotte Nash did a wonderful job at the State of the County in Gwinnett County, so definitely want to give her a big shout out. Also had a chance to go to Cobb County and visit with Chairman Mike Boyce and had a good meeting with him. I want to give a special shout out to Millie Rogers and Nobi Couch. They are big supporters of the gang, watch every Sunday. Also, the Cobb County retirees got a 2% cost of living adjustment. So we have over 11,000 retirees, county retirees in DeKalb County who got a 2% increase. Then lastly, big shout out, big happy birthday to my hero, my former boss, Congressman John Lewis, who turned 79 this week. So want to wish him a big happy birthday.
That's great.
All right, Lori.
Well, y'all don't leave a lot of time for us.
No, we're going to all three go quickly.
Our Facebook followers just come through every week for us, and I love it. So Ryan Brackett, Bronwyn Jennings, I hope I'm saying that right. The woman dubbed Granny with a Gun is a big winner. This was a 79-year-old grandmother who fired at a guy who didn't injure him. He broke into her home. She cussed him out. He was so scared that he hid in a closet until police came to arrest him. A lot of the Facebook followers chose Speaker Ralston as the loser.
Right.
Because they are just upset about, it's about justice in these cases.
They look awful. All right, Alexis, what do you have?
I'm going to celebrate Michael Russell, CEO of H.J. Russell Company, founded by his father. He's elected to the board of directors of the Federal Reserve Bank to represent business and industry. And the Interfaith Chapel at Hartsfield Atlanta Airport has been named for Dr. Barbara King, founder of Hillside Chapel of Truth. So congratulations to her. And then the Hyatt Regency recognized several people, including me.
Good for you. We'll talk more on that later.
Yes.
Hey, there's going to be a Walter Banks bobblehead at the Braves game. The great longtime usher and great American Walter Banks. See you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.